Little Archie, issue 170. How does your garden grow? Because Sabrina's a naive kid, she assumes that every kid's family grows vegetables in their garden in the summer, even though some of their parents would make the excuse that the squirrels might eat the vegetables. Betty's working in her garden and tells Sabrina she's going to make a strawberry shortcake for Archie. It's impressive that she knows how to do all this stuff at her age. Even Veronica has a garden. But if her butler Smithers is the one maintaining it, it's his garden. Sabrina finds some seeds in the cellar, and the box doesn't even say what the seeds are. Somehow she considers using them after that. She also plants them without asking her aunts what they are, but if they aren't even labeled, her aunts might not know either. She casts a spell to make the seeds grow and become plants before her eyes. She looks away for no apparent reason, and the seeds grow into a giant beanstalk instead of an original idea. Somehow Zelda asks Sabrina what she used to grow that, when she could just use magic to create it. Hilda fortunately explains why she added those seeds. Merlin left them there on his last visit. Why? Hilda says Sabrina has to pick the beans because she planted them. Somehow Sabrina even considers the idea that she'd have to climb the stalk. Of course she's told that she could fly with a broom. Zelda thinks to warn her to switch to her oxygen if the air gets thin, so at least the writer thought of that. Sabrina summons a big knapsack to carry the big beans and fills it. Because it's on her back and weighs her down, the branch she's on breaks and she falls. Why didn't she just teleport all the beans home? Lucky for her, she landed somewhere safe. Sabrina meets a giant and tells him she's a witch from Little Archie comics. I hate fourth wall breaking. That was completely unnecessary, makes no sense, and adds nothing. The giant was working in his garden on big vegetables. At least that's something new, but I've already seen way too many gardens in the story as it is. Sabrina says her beans are a lot to carry, and it cuts to later where she's back home and cheerful. She's told what's for dinner, and it turns out she invited the giant for supper for no reason. Zelda would have to cast a growth spell on the pork chop. Also, the neighbors would all freak out at seeing him. So she should have known better. Sabrina should have used magic to shrink the giant first. This story was kind of boring because it didn't try hard to be original. We've already seen vegetable gardens in the comic and giant vegetables, and a giant beanstalk leading to a giant. I haven't seen Betty and Veronica have vegetable gardens before. Sabrina has a dumb idea to plant some seeds from a witch's cellar without learning what they are first. But at least her casting a growth spell on them makes it make actual sense that she got a giant beanstalk. And her flying up the beanstalk on a broom is new to the story and takes advantage of her powers. She also does that by summoning a backpack to carry the giant beans she grew. And the giant turns out to be a harmless vegetable gardener, which is also new but doesn't feel like it because I've seen more than enough of these gardens from Betty and Veronica when they weren't even necessary. It's also new that rather than him antagonizing Sabrina for no reason, he's nice and gets invited to dinner. Little Archie, issue 171, an amusing story. Sabrina tells Zelda that her friends can't think of anything to do as Archie's listening to her. And Zelda says that when she was her age, she made her own fun and advises her to use magic. Then Zelda creates some food for Sabrina's friends and they're just happy about it. Archie asks where that came from, even though he would have heard Zelda say a spell earlier, and she's dressed like a witch, so it probably came from thin air. Jughead says he feels like he's at an amusement park. Zelda says that's a good idea and a trick she's never done before. Sabrina gets worried that things could go wrong and warns her, but Zelda looks in her magic book and says some magic words which are amusement backwards. You'd think spells would be in English so that the brain would be able to think about what the words mean instead of focusing on saying and reading gibberish correctly. Zelda creates an amusement park and tells the kids that it's free. She somehow forgot the roller coaster and says she'll order one, just to create one immediately. If they didn't know she was a witch, they'd be suspicious at it showing up so fast. Fortunately, the police doesn't get believed by his boss about this because he said it appeared right before his eyes. Hopefully that'll mean he won't be a problem. No, instead the story manages to contrive a different antagonist. Merlin shows up and says that no one's going to the chocolate shop anymore, even though it sells completely different things from an amusement park that doesn't seem to sell any food at all, and offers a different experience. Somehow the stores and banks have to close because things are free in one amusement park. that won't be selling any of the store's things or offering bank services. Wouldn't it be great if it turned out that Merlin was just lying to her to make her get rid of the amusement park? Because he doesn't like mortals, because he thinks he's better than them? At least that'd make more sense, since apparently his character now is that he thinks witches should be taught to cause mischief. Somehow she thinks she can't make it go away, even though she must have made other stuff go away plenty of times. Merlin somehow believes her and casts a spell to ruin everyone's fun. Sabrina's friends wonder if they dreamed all of that and plan on going home. At least Merlin complimented Zelda's magic skills, but nothing can make up for that ending. This story is about Zelda creating an amusement park to entertain Sabrina's bored friends for free. I liked how nice she was. And then Merlin tells her to shut it down. But what's frustrating is that he does a terrible job explaining to me why he thinks she should. Why would the banks be closed because of her amusement park? What he should have said is that eventually people will investigate Zelda because she's suddenly running an amusement park that wasn't there before for free. So she'll get the attention of the government. If you need a license to run an amusement park, she doesn't have one. She already had a policeman try to get her in trouble. Even then, I'd rather see her get approached by an auditor or something than erase his memory and get rid of the amusement park. Little Archie, issue 172. Guess who's coming to dinner? Zelda gives Sabrina a turkey for dinner, and Sabrina finds a magic wishbone. I guess it was from a Witch World turkey. Despite Sabrina getting told that's a magic wishbone, she still tells Jughead to make a wish with it, and she and her family get warped somewhere cold because he wished he could have their whole meal to himself. He still wouldn't want them to be somewhere freezing cold where they could die. And somehow he doesn't freak out at seeing them get warped away, as if he's used to magic existing and assumed the wishbone would do that, and knows he can magically get home safely. Somehow Hilda decides to fly home by broom instead of warping everyone home immediately, even though she's in a hurry to get home before he eats everything. He eats all of their dinner, wishes for dessert, and doesn't question it showing up. Betty sees him lying down on the sidewalk and gets worried, and he offers her the wishbone because it turns out he can become full. You'd think he'd wish he wasn't full anymore long before doing this though. He tells Betty to wave the wishbone and wish for something. It sure is convenient that the magic wishbone grants infinite wishes and doesn't just grant a wish for the first person that snapped it in two. You'd think Sabrina would get a wish too since she helped. Betty wishes for Archie to show up, and he smiles when she says he should get ready for his date with her, but in a really annoying twist, Veronica's right there to object to it right away. Why is she here? I guess she was on her way to Archie's for the date, but I thought it was the men who showed up to the women's house for the date. So this feels unfair. Why wouldn't she have a limousine driver drive her everywhere, instead of walking to places, which is easier to believe for teenagers than children? Thank goodness Betty can level the playing field by wishing her away. Thankfully, she has the mercy to give Reggie the wishbone and tell him to rescue Veronica. Of course, it's a bad idea to give Reggie and Veronica a magic wishbone, and she should have known better. It'd be way more responsible of her to wish that Veronica was warped back home with no more interest in Archie. I also have to assume that the reason she didn't wish that Archie would always love her and would always want to date only her is that she knows she wouldn't feel like she earned it. But I wish she explained that. So Reggie turns himself into a superhero who can fly to save Veronica, who thinks that she jumped into the lake for some reason. Sabrina's family goes back home on the broom, not seeming to be cold at all. I assume they cast a heat spell. Zelda sets a spell in the house near a potion to make everything that happened get undone. Zelda reveals that she can reverse time too, and not just Merlin. So why don't they reverse time more often? I guess only Zelda in this family knows how to mix the potion just right to cast a spell. And Merlin's more powerful than them. Sabrina smartly says that she shouldn't eat turkey this time. Zelda creates a fish with no bones, and for no reason she summons magic talking fish from the sea, and Jughead runs into the house hungry as the story ends. This story has Sabrina and her family try to eat a turkey dinner, and when Jughead easily goes into the house uninvited and makes a wish on a wishbone that Sabrina offered him, he wishes the family away to eat the dinner himself. I have to assume that being near a witch is what causes a wishbone to actually grant wishes immediately in an obvious way. because otherwise everyone would know that wishbones can do this. Conveniently, nobody freaks out at the wishbone being able to do that stuff. I guess because they're all naive kids who took it for granted that wishbones worked like that. Conveniently, Betty encounters Jughead outside and gets given the wishbone instead of him still wanting to use the wishbone to wish for stuff to eat, after wishing that he's not full. So somehow Betty gets to wish Archie to her and recklessly gives the wishbone to Reggie to save Veronica from a lake, instead of just wishing that Veronica wasn't in the lake and didn't want to date Archie anymore. But all of that was for nothing because everything good that happened to the characters was undone by Zelda, who uses a potion and spell to return things back to the way they were before the story started. I don't like the ending because there's no reason she'd zap up a magic talking fish for dinner. Wouldn't they be uncomfortable trying to kill and eat a talking fish? Little Archie, issue 173, A Tale That Bugged Ya. We see Hilda try to hit a big bug that you'd only know was a mosquito from the text box in the first panel because it's big, yellow, and can talk for no reason. When a bug bites an old witch, it turns into one. Why? That's a disaster waiting to happen. You'd think they'd have to specifically tell their magic to do that. Even if that was the natural result of witches having magic in their blood, a bunch of witches would have combined their powers to get rid of that problem forever. You'd think this would cause the end of the world. I thought witches had magic in a magic battery that has to be changed and given a tune-up. Well, I guess it leaks into their blood. The mosquito that talks and responds to the narrator for no reason summons some potions and says he has to make up some spells as well. How do you make up spells? He's really new at this. Or is it a she now because he was transformed into an old witch, not a warlock? Well, the mosquito doesn't complain about being transformed. Probably because that's part of the spell too. And I guess this is a part of the curse, which is possibly only the case in the mortal world to cause chaos there. But magical chaos would make magic require more work to cover up. They just love chaos that much that they think it's worth it. So she says she's not flying on a broom, and creatively summons a spaceship instead, which she rides on top of. I guess part of the spell that made her a witch is that she also knows about spaceships and brooms. Some more bugs talk for no reason. Did the story have to take place on Earth? Maybe it should have taken place in the witch world to explain why the bugs can talk. She says there's potions that make stuff fall on you and potions to make stuff disappear. So we see plenty of bad things happen to people because of the mosquito, who I guess was magically brainwashed to want to do these things to people he never saw before. Reggie's bike gets ruined, and Veronica gets hit by a ball by Betty. I suppose the story has to have characters who don't deserve it suffer too, so that you won't root for this thing. The mosquito gets hungry and bothers Sabrina. For no reason, the mosquito turns good because she bit a nice witch. But I never see Hilda going out of her way to constantly do bad deeds with magic to various people, one after another, all day long. The mosquito is acting a lot worse than her. Compared to the mosquito, Hilda's a neutral character in practice. I'd hate to think that she'd act this badly if it weren't for having to raise Sabrina, but even then, Sabrina's in school all day. We barely see her have enemies, so wouldn't the mosquito have turned into a good witch from biting Hilda, sassy or not? She stupidly approaches Hilda and says she doesn't want to bite anyone and just wants to be her friend. She'd still have to bite someone to avoid starving. Hilda looks unsympathetic because she keeps trying to kill the mosquito anyways. Then she falls off a cliff, and the story ends with her hurt. You'd think she'd magically heal herself immediately. Since Zelda can reverse time, she'd do that too. This story was confusing, but at least it was creative. It turns out that mosquitoes get witch powers and costumes when they bite witches. That'd have to be a thing that only started in the times where witch costumes were the norm for all of the pilgrims, because in most of human history, nobody dressed like that. Now I have to assume that every mortal who saw this happen to a mosquito, or saw a mosquito in a witch costume, just assumed it was a hallucination. Why do they get affected this way when the witch doesn't want that to happen? The chaos they cause with magic would require spy witches to erase memories to cover them up when it's too obviously magical. I got excited when the mosquito turned good from Sabrina, but shockingly, the story doesn't show the mosquito doing tons of good things and making it up to everyone that she wronged. Why not? Instead, Hilda tries to swat the mosquito anyways, just because she's a mosquito, and then gets injured as karma. But it's hurt too much for me to feel like she deserved it. It wasn't funny, so it shouldn't have ended with her hurt. We should have seen her comically fall down a hill instead. Little Archie, issue 174. Santa's Helpers. The story starts out boring me by focusing on Santa and his talking reindeer for some reason, with none of the Sabrina characters in sight, meaning that this could be a story in anything. Santa says he's not going to use the sleigh because the elves told him that open sleighs are out of style and built a rock chip for him. How does he know how to fly it? Did the information about piloting it get downloaded into his brain? There's a reason he uses reindeer. It barely requires any skill by comparison. Is the rocket ship really automated and knows where every house is? One of the reindeer says he won't miss the trip because landing on icy roofs all the time gives him the chills. I'm guessing this rocket ship business won't last. Santa says it's nice to be snug and warm for a change. You'd think that Santa would be warm in his sleigh too so that he wouldn't freeze, because there'd be a temperature regulation air bubble around him. Without that kind of magic spell, he and his reindeer would never be able to handle extreme temperatures and the variation in temperature that comes with flying around the world. Some people notice Santa's unidentified rocket ship on radar, and they decide to shoot it down, and a Russian assumes the metal object's from imperialists and gets told to shoot it down. I assume he's Russian because he says comrade, but realistically they'd be speaking Russian the whole time. The rocket ship gets shot down, and Santa's conveniently unharmed, but ends up falling. You'd think if the elves knew how to build a rocket ship because it's more up to date, they'd also know that they need a magic spell to hide it from radar. Hilda wonders why they always have to wait until the last minute, and Zelda says they have to wait for the price of trees to come down. Good thing the earlier story called The Christmas Tree explained why the hell they're wasting money and time buying a tree instead of creating one with magic. It's a humorous Sabrina. Hilda hopes they have enough skulls and pumpkins to decorate the tree in their own cool way that doesn't look like Christmas. Why would they have to hope for that? They could summon as many as they want. Sabrina asks Salem what's wrong, thinking that she's seeing a falling star. Then because of Salem, she sees Santa falling. Why would she say he was flying around when he was falling? So the soft snow breaks his fall, leaving him completely unharmed. Is that realistic? Because it's not the fall that kills you, it's the sudden stop. Sabrina says she'll help Santa deliver the presents to the children. Why does he think he can't deliver the presents for even a second? Wouldn't he remember that Sabrina's family helped them deliver them in an earlier story? Wouldn't he recognize the witch on sight? Why does Santa ask them how they could do that? Is there really an entire species of Santa and he's a different one? Still, why don't they question him not remembering them? This has to be in a different universe from the earlier story. Hilda casts a spell to have Santa's sleigh and reindeer brought to her, even though she and her family delivered presents in their own special way last time. One of the reindeer says that he was just shampooing his fur. How could he do that with no opposable thumbs when he's a four-legged creature? If they wanted to be funny, they should have shown him somehow doing that. Santa fortunately flies away in his sleigh to deliver the presents instead of the main characters delivering presents yet again. He thanks them for the magic. Zelda's flattered at being called a girl, and Hilda says that Santa did that because he's older than them, when really he'd do that because he's being nice. The story ends with Zelda saying a very sappy sentence for a witch. This story was about Santa getting a rocket ship to be more up to date when his sleigh worked fine, or apparently it didn't because somehow it didn't keep him warm. If he needed to keep warm, why does he survive living in the North Pole? There's parts of it that'll kill you in seconds with its coldness. So Santa's rocket gets shot down and an admirable reality ensues moment, and after he doesn't recognize Hilda, unrealistically not being injured, she uses magic to get his sleigh and reindeer back so that it could deliver the presents. So it's really just a Santa story with Sabrina's family as a Deus Ex Machina. I say Deus Ex Machina because he was very lucky that he happened to be near them. At least it was inventive that he got a rocket ship, so it was worth seeing him again. But it felt a bit forced that he even considered abandoning his sleigh for something else just because it was newer.